Raised beds are widely celebrated in gardening circles. They warm quickly in spring, drain well, and can be easier to manage than in-ground beds. But beneath the surface of these tidy rectangles lurks a silent problem that most gardeners never realize. Without proper attention to aeration and soil structure, raised beds can become hostile environments for earthworms, turning a supposedly fertile space into a nutrient bottleneck. Worms are more than just soil cleaners. They are engineers, nutrient cyclers, and microbial allies. Starve them of oxygen, and the benefits of your raised bed plummet. Overcompacting your raised bed kills worms slowly. Many gardeners fill raised beds with fine, rich compost, topsoil, and amendments, then step back and expect life to flourish. The problem is that these materials, when densely packed, create heavy, compacted soil that restricts airflow. Worms require moist but aerated soil to move freely and feed on organic matter. In compacted raised beds, oxygen levels drop, microbial activity becomes unbalanced, and worms retreat or perish. A practical remedy is to layer materials with varying textures when filling beds. Start with coarse materials at the base, such as small twigs or shredded cardboard, then alternate layers of compost and soil. For example, a 4-inch base of coarse brown material, followed by 2 inches of finished compost, then mixed topsoil, repeated until the bed is full, creates a sponge-like structure that allows worms to move vertically and horizontally with ease. The so-called dig and stir myth is actually suffocating soil life. You know, many raised bed guides encourage digging, forking, or stirring the soil to, well, aerate it. While a bit of light mixing can temporarily relieve compaction, excessive disturbance disrupts fungal networks, destroys worm burrows, and can even temporarily reduce oxygen availability as soil particles collapse. Instead, it's better to focus on passive aeration. Applying a layer of fibrous mulch such as straw, shredded leaves, or even coarse bark right on top of the bed encourages worms to naturally tunnel down, creating air channels as they go. Another really effective method is to plant cover crops with deep roots, like clover or radish, which naturally pierce compacted zones while feeding worms and microbes at the same time. Over time, these living aerators improve soil structure without the need for any heavy-handed digging. Waterlogged soil in raised beds will suffocate worms quite quickly. Now, raised beds often drain better than ground beds, but overly rich mixes can hold moisture like a sponge, especially if they're filled with fine compost or peat-heavy soil. Excess water fills up those air pockets, depriving worms of the oxygen they need. On the other hand, soil that's too dry slows down microbial activity, which indirectly limits the food available to worms. Aim for a moisture level where the soil feels like a damp sponge. Not dripping, but definitely not bone dry either. When watering, it's best to saturate slowly and let the water absorb, rather than just flooding the bed all at once. For instance, watering twice a week in small increments often works better than a single heavy soak. This approach maintains both oxygen and microbial balance, while also keeping worms happy and active. Organic diversity, really fuels worm populations. Worms are picky eaters in the best possible way. They thrive on a mix of carbon and nitrogen materials, such as decaying leaves, shredded paper, straw, kitchen scraps, and a bit of aged compost. Beds dominated by uniform, overly rich compost may feed microbes, but they just don't provide the fibrous material worms need for burrowing and digestion. A practical strategy is to mix coarse browns and greens in a roughly 3-to-1 ratio when creating or topping up your beds. For example, after harvesting a crop, you might layer 2 inches of shredded leaves with 1 inch of kitchen scraps and a dusting of compost before planting the next crop. Over time, worms will colonize these layers, naturally improving nutrient cycling and soil texture. You don't need complicated tests to know if your raised bed supports worms. Just dig a small trench in the soil a few inches deep. A healthy bed will show visible worms at different levels, active tunnels and crumbly soil with organic matter mixed in. In contrast, worm scarcity, hard clumps or sticky soil indicate poor aeration. Adjustments can be as simple as adding mulch, lightly forking the top layer, or introducing coarse bedding materials like straw or cardboard. Over successive seasons, these small changes result in a thriving worm population that enhances fertility and soil structure far more effectively than chemical inputs. When worms are present and active, they do more than just move soil. Their burrows create air channels, improve drainage, mix organic matter, and support microbial networks critical for nutrient availability. Feeding worms correctly is as important as aeration. You should avoid overloading beds with fresh, nitrogen-rich compost without fibrous material. Instead, balance greens with browns, observe soil moisture, and allow natural decomposition to occur gradually. Introducing a handful of shredded leaves or straw each month between plant rows keeps worms busy, encourages vertical and horizontal movement, and ensures oxygen reaches even the deepest root zones. Balanced aeration turns raised beds into worm-friendly ecosystems. Ultimately, a raised bed is only as healthy as the life it supports. Proper layering, limited disturbance, careful moisture management, and a mix of organic materials transform compacted, suffocating soil into a thriving ecosystem. Worms create the underground infrastructure that sustains crops, reduces pest pressure, and improves soil structure. By paying attention to aeration and feeding the right mix of materials, gardeners can convert a worm death trap into a dynamic, fertile environment that nourishes plants year after year. If you found this guide useful, subscribe to Soil Doctor and share it with fellow gardeners. Understanding the hidden aeration pitfalls in raised beds will change the way your garden grows, keeping worms alive, plants thriving, and soil resilient for decades to come.